Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TickTocking. As always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram and at TickTocking.com for my full inventory. And today I have a watch that I am kind of shocked that I've never reviewed before. This is the FP Journe Chronometre Bleu, and it's become kind of a cult classic at this point. I've had many of them. They tend to come and go very quickly, so maybe that's why I haven't video reviewed them. I usually sell them and ship them out before I get a chance to make a video. But here I have one today. It's already sold, but before I send it out of here, I figured I'd video it. So the Chronometre Bleu is cool and unique in several ways. The first, obviously, being the blue dial. So that's the first thing that anybody's going to notice when they see this watch, and it's basically a mirror. It's a chrome blue, and it's mirrored, and it's hard to even capture it because you're just going to see reflections of everything, basically. But you can see how it goes almost black at times, and then it picks up the light and shines a very bright blue. You also get some kind of back reflection of the printing on the dial, reflecting on the bottom of the crystal and back to the dial in some ways, which kind of gives it this ghost feel. You can see it there. The printing's actually on the dial, but it makes almost like a shadow or a three-dimensional effect at the right angles, which is actually very nice and cool. The hands are the kind of traditional Journe chronometre hands, the big ones. It's got no power reserve like the Chronometre Souverain has. So it's a clean dial with just this small seconds here and these nice big hands. It's incredibly legible. Manual wind, of course. And one interesting thing is that I actually never noticed this until I had a few of these together. But like the very early Journe dials had a lot of variance to them. I've noticed that with the Chronometre Bleus, the actual printing and hands of the dial have some variance. Some are whiter than others, and some are a bit more cream. I don't really have a preference between the two necessarily, but if you notice like an older one next to a newer one, you definitely notice that the hands actually on the newer one that I had together were more cream than the older one, which was more white. I don't know that that goes for every example. I'd have to see a bunch of them together. Maybe it goes in batches and some are more white, some are more cream, and it alternates a little bit. But I had two of these together recently, and the older one was definitely more white. The case here is tantalum. It's the only time Journe has used a tantalum case, except in like a one-off piece. But the only serial production tantalum case. And tantalum is a really cool metal. It's got this very blue-gray look to it. It's fairly heavy, similar in density to platinum, maybe not quite as dense, but pretty close. It's definitely not light like titanium, even though it looks a little bit like titanium. And it's bluer than titanium. It's rarely used because it's actually extremely hard to machine. It's a very hard metal. And that's one of the reasons that this watch has become very difficult to find. The tantalum case is very hard to machine. The chrome blue dial is incredibly hard to make, and it's said that Journe has a very high loss rate on them. And so they have kind of constant manufacturing issues with this piece that leads to severe supply issues. And lately, they've just skyrocketed in price because new ones are not coming out with any sort of regularity. Several other things make this interesting to the Journe range, and one of the big ones is the size. It's actually 39 millimeters, and it's the only watch in the entire range that's that size. So the older pieces were 38, and the newer pieces are 40, some even 42, but this is the only one at 39. And it's a really nice size for a Journe case. It's basically the biggest difference between the 38s and the 40s are the bezel size. The 40s just have a thicker bezel, And sometimes that can be a little bit too chunky, depending on the watch. Whereas 38 has a very thin bezel, and that gives kind of a vintagey look. This gives a nice balance between the kind of modern look without this big chunky bezel. So I really like the 39. I'll show it to you on the wrist in a little bit. Let's flip to the movement. It's got a gold movement like all the other newer Journes with some really interesting finishing techniques. And you can see here the bridges have normal Geneva stripes on them, but the base plates here, you've got this kind of perlage type of finish on that one there, and then here you've got this kind of crisscross. I'm sure there's a French word for it, but I don't really know what it is. It's quite nice. Journe is definitely not known for finishing, and so you wouldn't want to compare this with a sort of watchmaker that really focuses on finishing. But it is very, very nicely finished, and more than that, it's really pretty. You know, maybe it doesn't hold up to a Dufour or something like that with a loop, but just on looking at it, it's a very beautiful movement. The layout's awesome. What they've done with this movement is put all of the connecting wheels under the dial. So it's kind of like a mystery movement. You know, you see the escapement here and the balance, and it doesn't appear to be connected to anything, which gives this really cool effect. And the gold movement in contrast with this kind of dark blue of the tantalum case is a really cool contrast. It just pops and it looks really nice. And so these are all the reasons why people just kind of love this watch. It also is one of the cheapest watches in the entire Journe line. So you have like this, the fact that it's an entry-level watch, but it's got a very, very nice, beautiful manual wind, awesome movement, this cool dial, the unique metal, the unique size. You can see how it's become kind of a cult favorite. The movement in general has two barrels that run in parallel. So that means there's two barrels, but they're not used to get more power reserve. They're used to get higher quality power to the escapement. And in this case, I think the power reserve is something like 55 hours, something like that. Basically wind it every 2 days or so, which is nice and convenient while not long. But it does get very high quality power, and it, in theory, should be a very robust and precise movement. So that's kind of the point that Journe goes for more than finishing, is chronometric performance, especially if you're going to call a watch the Chronometre Souverain or Chronometre Bleu. You better keep good time, right? So that's it. That's the Chronometre Bleu. Let's put it on the wrist and see what it looks like. This one's on a brown strap. They usually come on blue straps. I kind of like mixing it up with them. I'm quite fond of wearing my own on the sort of olive green strap, which is a nice contrast and just gives it like a cool kind of casual look. So there you can see the size is quite nice. It is not super thin, but definitely a thin watch. And it fits very nicely on the wrist. It's just really comfortable. This could be easily a daily wearer, but also can be a very special watch for special occasions. It can kind of be a jack of all trades, and because of that is a staple in many a collection. So that's it. Again, this is the FP Journe Chronometre Bleu, and these are getting really hard to find, guys. So snap them up while you still can. And I'm trying to buy all that I can for people. So we'll see if I can find any more. Anyway, this one's off to its new home, and I'm glad that I got to share it with you guys first. Thanks a lot.